Hey y'all. So last night I did a video about checking your connections, and I was considering doing a series about it and talking about it further. So I will do this in parts. I will preface this by saying that the people that are mentioned will not be named, simply for the protection of their children, protection of other people that are innocent. So I will preface that. So in my video last night, I said that I had a connection with this couple that I thought were destiny pushers. I met them about 2013, 2014, started traveling with them, being their driver, being their armor bearer, and pushing their business, pushing their ministry. This is a long story, so I'm going to break it down into parts. The first red flag when it came to this connection was shortly after I met the wife in this couple. She said, I'm going to be your spiritual mom. I see you as a daughter. And I told her, well, you're too young to be my spiritual mom. And at that time, I already had a spiritual mother. Anyone who knows me knows who my spiritual mother is. But anyone that knows that you have a spiritual parent who wants to pull you from that spiritual parent, that is a red flag. And you should always check your connections and check your motives, check people's motives behind why they want to do something, why they're saying something. Not that I feel as though I'm so great, but stay tuned because there's a lot to go with this connections. So yes, the first red flag was they told me that I was going to be their spiritual daughter, and that I was called to push them in ministry. Every idea that I had, they felt as though it wasn't my time yet, but it was their time to be pushed by me, by my ideas, by my administrative background, by everything that I was able to do. And so I found myself even 10 years later not having reached my fullest potential because I was so busy pushing theirs. Stay tuned for part two. Part two. So I was very reluctant about becoming this spiritual daughter. However, I did it out of, I guess, respect. I had just moved to the area where they lived. I was trying to work it out with my abusive ex-husband, and I needed a support system, and they said they were going to be parents, so I accepted. Shortly after, I started working in their business, doing a lot of the admin work. I started serving in their church that they were trying to build, and I found myself every single day, even late night after hours, on the computer, working for their business, working for their ministry, creating ads, burning my candle at both ends, burning the night oil, giving. And I didn't pay attention to the fact that it wasn't really reciprocating. But at that time, I thought I was being a good daughter. I thought I was an asset. I thought I was walking in my purpose. I started to drive them up and down the coast for speaking engagements. I started giving large amounts of money to the ministry. I even let my home be utilized for Bible study because they didn't have a building. You name it. The list goes on and on and on for the things that I started giving for the sake of being a daughter and for the sake of being part of the ministry and being a tithe-paying member. Stay tuned for part three. Here's where it gets kind of crazy and the plot twists. So some time went by and I started getting really close to the mother. And so there were times where I spent a lot of times at her house. Now, these people had so-called lots of money and lots of properties, nice cars, things like that. However, I found myself giving lots of money, and there were times where I was buying Brazilian weaves and paying for her hair to get done. Now, let's keep in mind, I'm a single parent, and I have almost 1.5 income with my ex-husband when he chose to give. However, I am buying weaves for this lady and sometimes going on Ashley Stewart online and buying shoes and buying different things for the sake of being a good daughter. Nobody sees anything wrong with this? Stay tuned for the next part. Part 4. So the crap had hit the fan, and I had started living with this couple and their children and another member or two of the church. Now, here's where it gets kind of sticky. Most of the females in the church that had been married joined this ministry, and for some crazy reason, they are now divorced or separated from their spouse, which is a common theme in this ministry. So I was now going through divorce or separation from my significant other. And so me and my child moved into their home. And so that wasn't just the catapult period of me giving more money, helping out with things around the house. But now I was a full-time nanny, driver, armor bearer, and I was tired. There were times where I barely got any sleep, and we're still talking about these connections, right? Because I thought this was a God connection. I thought I was being a good daughter. I thought I was being a good armor bearer. I thought I was being a good servant. Which for the context of it, I was a servant. I was an unpaid slave, as my husband now tells me. And we'll talk about how he became part of it as well. I hope you are holding on to your seats. This is part 5. So the crap had hit the fan, as I noted in my last video. I was staying in their house. And the wife started to confide some things in me, about her not being happy in her marriage, about her infidelity, and so on, right? And so it was just, I was in a position where, I trusted her and I held her secrets, and it became very heavy for me. And there was a lot of things that I saw, which I'm not going to divulge, but I saw a lot of things that would make you feel like, why am I even in the church world? Why am I even following leaders who tell us to get our lives straight, but it is a whole hot mess behind closed doors? Here is a part of the story that gets kind of crazy. So those of you that have read my book, been on my website, know my story, know that part of my story is that I was an escort, for lack of better words. Long story short, the dad in the situation knew I was going on a job with a John. I was not fully delivered at this time. Let's put this disclaimer out there, although I was serving in their ministry, which was supposed to be a deliverance ministry. Anyway, he knew I was going. He told me to go make that money and be careful. And when I came back, he would see me. So I went on this trip. I went to another state with him. I ran his pockets, came back with about $1,500. What I ran in credit cards, I used to buy the wife some more hair. And they were very happy. In fact, when I got back home that afternoon, we went to go hear Juanita Bynum preach live. And guess what he asked me to do for him, the dad? He said, give me $100 so I can go get in the $100 prayer line. So you're taking dirty money to put in Juanita Bynum's prayer line so that you can get a blessing. Okay, are you ready for part 6? So in my last part, I talked about how they took my dirty money and used it for the prayer line when we went to hear Juanita Bynum preach. Yeah, that still doesn't sit well with me. So during this time in my life, I had recently had a miscarriage and did not know how to express it. Because me and the wife were so friendly and we were so like sisterhood. I confided in her. She said, don't tell your dad because it will break his heart. So me and her concocted this plan to kind of hide it for a while and just go on as if it was still continuing, right? Talk about a mind game. So we were continuing as if it was still going on. I was still living in their house. I caught her in several lies. I covered her because that's what a good daughter does, right? We cover, we don't tell. But that means you're not supposed to tell on me either, right? So here's where it gets even more crazy. So one day I'm just fed up with all the lies and I go and talk to dad and we sit down, we're at a restaurant and I say, listen, I'm having a hard time because I want to get my life right. I don't want to lie anymore. So here's what's going on. Your wife has been having an affair. She's been dating other people. Now, I may not have been right for sharing all of this, but they were putting a lot of pressure on me and I was not mentally stable. So I may not have been right for telling her secrets. You let me know in the comments. But anyway, I said, she's been telling me as a member of the church and as her daughter that this is what she's doing. And by the way, we're covering up for this phantom pregnancy and I can't carry these lies anymore or these secrets. Please help me pray through this. Please help me, work through this because I can't do it anymore. Stay tuned for the next part. Okay, you ready? I hope you're still holding on. So that night after the conversation took place, the husband, confronted the wife. And of course, as you probably guessed, she denied the affair. She denied the text message that she sent me and her friend because she actually had been going to her friend's house to meet the guy and then letting me know her location, letting me know she was okay, and then coming back home, right? Crazy as a first lady. Anyway, so her and the husband get into an argument, which I hear some of it because I'm living in the house. A lot of yelling, a lot of screaming. She denied everything. And he pretty much set me down, but he told her that I couldn't serve anymore in the ministry and that if he found out that she knew about the phantom pregnancy the whole time, he was going to leave her. So now there's pressure on me not to say anything further. Also, he has decided that I am going to, that next Sunday, stand up in front of the entire congregation and tell them that I lied about the pregnancy. And I was not allowed, per her decision, to ever mention that she was part of it. So I had to cover her, even though she had exposed me. And I had to say that I made it up by myself, even though I lost the child and was dealing with death and dealing with the loss and dealing with the pain. I had to then get up in front of all of these people, be ridiculed, yelled at, fussed at by some of the members, and still bite my tongue about what this lady had did. Stay tuned for the next part. Part 8. OMG. You would think I had enough, right? Okay, so over time, I am forgiven. I'm still in their house, but I'm moved from the bedroom I was in into their den where I had to sleep on the floor instead of sleep on the bed. My daughter was still allowed to sleep in a bed, but I was excommunicated. So I was silenced. And so I had to sleep on the floor. I was committed to having to pray around the clock. I was not allowed to sit up front in church. I had to sit in the back. All of my privileges were taken and I was just excommunicated. But let's not talk about any type of repercussions or punishments for the wife and her indiscretions. But I digress. But you would think I had enough, right? There became some time when I was secretly still allowed to talk to the wife. She had to only text me or call me when he wasn't around, even though I was living in their house. So at one point she started looking at Jaguars and she wanted a Jaguar. So we decided, me and her, that we were going to buy twin Jaguars. So we went on Craigslist. They were used, but they were very expensive. And I was going to buy these twin Jaguars. You would think that after she lied on me and after, she pretty much blew the cover and did not take any of the blame or responsibility for her actions, and I took all the responsibility, that she wouldn't ask me or even consider me buying her a matching Jaguar. Stay tuned for the next part. Part 9. So, by some act of God, I did not get the twin Jaguars. Here's what happened. So, I actually got kicked out of the house because I was standing on business. What do I mean by that? So, like I said, I was moved from the bedroom I was in to the den. I was pretty much the housemaid, having to clean, having to babysit, having to do everything as kind of like a punishment, but I'm a grown woman, right? So over some time, the father, he kind of was, thinking about it over and over again, what I told him. And he came to me, he said, I want to know what you said. Was it true? So I remember this day like it was yesterday. We were outside of his garage and he was sitting in his truck with his door open. And he said, Teresa, come here. I want to know, what you said about my wife. Was it true? Now, I was standing on business and we're supposed to be Holy Ghost filled people, right? So I just straight up said, yes, it's true. Yes, she was seeing somebody else. Yes, she was going to this pastor friend of hers house as a cover up to go date old boy. Long story short, they got into another argument. And this was around the time where John Legend's song, All of Me Loves All of You, came out. He played it for her. It was loud. We could hear it outside. And then he asked her, was this true? They got into an argument. I got put out the house because I was called a liar. But here's the kicker. When I got put out, I was told that my baby could stay, right? It was all a part of a bigger plan. I wasn't really going for that. So while my baby was in school, I went and picked her up and we moved into my uncle's attic. Stay tuned for the next part. All right. So you would think after being put out of the house, I would have no more contact. How about the father hits me up and says, well, you were staying in the house for so long and my electric bill is due and I need you to help pay at least half of it. Are you kidding me right now? Half of your electric bill? Mind you, let's rewind. I've been buying weaves for the wife. I was about to buy twin Jaguars. Don't forget that when I went on my little trip, I gave money. And not only did I give money, but I gave $100 to go stand in Juanita Bynum's prayer line. As you already probably are following the storyline, I'm already a giver. So I wasn't staying in the house for free. Not at all. So here we go. I, like the dummy I was playing, actually did pay half of this said electric bill. And I want you to know this is not a average 3-bedroom house. This is a 7-bedroom, 4-bathroom, massive house. So the electric bill was not small. Mind you, I'm still a single mother at this time. But let's bring in my husband. Plot twist. Stay tuned for the next part. We have 11 parts so far because this story gets that big, but you would think that I wouldn't have let it go on as far as I let it go on. So let's recap. All right. So most of the people in this ministry are divorced, separated, and then the women end up staying in their house. So we already went over that. I stayed there. This truth came out about her affair, non-affair, and all of that. And it was so crazy because when I got kicked out of the house, I was asked, did it really happen? This went so far as to the mom coming to my apartment before I moved into their house because she had been seeing old boy, who I was calling SD for stepdad. She had been seeing him for, let's say, maybe 6 or 7 months. And we went to one Monday or Tuesday before we opened up at their business. We went to like Rite Aid somewhere and got a pregnancy test, right? Took all of the kids, her children as well as my child, to my apartment. They sat in the living room while we did this. And so I wouldn't say I was right for divulging, and I'm not going to say I was wrong for divulging, but I want you to keep in mind, I was a daughter. who was put in the middle of their marital drama. Mind you, I had my own that I was trying to work through. And instead of getting the help I needed, it was forget him, you come here and live with us and pretty much serve us for free. But you can give. So it's not for free for you. You can give and you can, be a part. You can be our driver. You can be our babysitter. You can be our housemaid. You can be our cook. Not so much a cook because they were really good at that, but you get the premise of what I'm saying. I mean, I was driving up and down the coast, the East Coast, several days at a time, serving and doing and being an unpaid driver. And I thought it was all in the name of being a good daughter, being a good, citizen, being a good member of the ministry. Nah, stay tuned for how my husband gets involved. So, as I said in my last video, I got kicked out of their house and I actually went to stay with my uncle. During this time, I had met my husband. So, we were dating, we were talking, and the crazy thing is my husband had kind of got introduced to them and he wasn't kind of feeling how they did things. He wasn't really sure. When they met him, they actually told him like, oh, be careful of her. She lied about being pregnant. She did this, she did that. So you meet someone and the first thing you do is talk trash about someone that's supposed to be your daughter, and you make them or kind of like make them the bad guy in the situation. Anyway, so my husband that left a bad taste in his mouth. Anyway, we started dating, we started talking. And so he started distancing me from that situation because he felt as though it was toxic. However, there were still secret conversations going on between me and the wife because I felt like, well, I was a daughter, maybe she did love me. My mind went back to the time that the father had a major surgery. And even though I was excommunicated, I was asked to come rub his feet and I was asked to come pick up some, groceries, certain things that he needed. I was asked to, be there, even though I was excommunicated. So maybe in my jacked up thought process, I thought maybe there was something that wasn't so bad about this. I thought maybe there wasn't something so toxic, so cultish about this situation, where other people on the outside were like, Teresa, that sounds like a cult. How is that really working? How are you serving but not getting anything in return? How is all the women in the ministry separated, divorced, living in their home? How is this really working? How is it that it just doesn't look right. It didn't look right from the outside looking in. And so many people had warned me about the situation. And so my husband started, separating me from it. We got our own place. We were doing well. We were parenting our child. But the secret conversations continued, even so much so that I actually went against my better judgment, my husband's better judgment, and I left home because they prophesied about my husband. Stay tuned for the next part. Part 13. Are you ready? So one day I get a call. Now I had been separated from this situation for a while. I get a call and I'm told, well, we really need you to be a part of the ministry. We really need your help. Because they moved out of state due to some tax fraud, not going into that, but they moved out of state. And so I was told, we need you to be a part of the ministry. God called you to us. So wherever you go, you're not going to get away because God called you to us. You are ordained by God to be part of our ministry. So I packed up, left my husband, and went to, with my daughter, went to another daughter of the ministry who happened to be divorced, by the way. I went to her house and stayed with her because the plan was we were all going to move together with this family that moved out of state. And we were all going to be back in their home, in their area, helping them like I was helping them, or slaving for them like I was slaving for them before. So I get to this sister's house. And when I get there, the mother prophesied to me. She said, I see some things with your husband and you don't know he's angry and he's going to kill you. He might just kill you. He might just be so hateful towards you. And I don't see him as a good thing. So me feeling like maybe she's walking in the prophetic and me being in my backslidden state and not really pressed into God, I trusted what she said. And I shut my husband out. I was separated from him. I just knew he had it out for me. My so-called sister cussed him out and told him he was the devil and he was a manipulator and, he needed to get off of her property. God intervened and I ended up actually going back to my husband. But here's a plot twist. Stay tuned for the next part. I went back to my husband and we're now living happily ever after. Maybe 3 years go by and I'm still in secret conversation. Not so much secret, but secret to her husband. I'm in secret conversation with the mom. My husband knew about it, but we were still communicating and she was, checking on me from time to time, seeing how I was doing, saying, "Oh, Mija, I miss you so much. You're such a great daughter." Yeah, okay. And so we were asked to come down to a special service where she and her husband and they had finally gotten a building in the state that they had moved to. And my husband and I were asked to come down and visit. So we came down and we visited, and it was a nice gathering. And during this gathering, we were told, y'all need to come be a part of this. You could be an asset to the ministry. You could really help us. We could really glean from what you have to offer. We'd be honored to have you. So stay tuned for the next part. OMG, y'all. Part 15. So after a lot of going back and forth and a lot of deliberating between my husband and I, we decided to go ahead and take this leap of faith. And we moved several hours out of state to go help this ministry of my parents. And so we go. And we should have known when the job that my husband applied for fell through that was a sign that maybe we shouldn't have gone. But I digress. We end up moving and things seem okay so far when we get there until there are seeds of discord thrown where I'm told one thing, my husband's told another thing. I'm told bad things about my husband. My husband is giving innuendos about me, and it's starting to tear our home or our marriage apart. Clever, huh? Especially for a ministry where most of the couples in the ministry are separated and the wife then stays with the ministry and the husband goes about his merry way. That was a horrible time. It ended up so bad that, we ended up leaving. It was crazy. All of the flashbacks came back to me during this time about how, I really wasn't appreciated. And I now traveled several states to help, and it just got terrible. The lies that I had to cover for the wife. And, every time I came up with a business idea, it wasn't time for me to work my business or work my ministry. But yet I always seemed to have time to work their business, work their ministry, push their vision, help with their kids, make their stuff work. Raise funds for their stuff, put on a program, put on a show, put on a production that had tickets sold and people come out to support them. My mind began to go back to even the times when people would treat me bad based upon what they said, but they only received half of the story. But yet you still wanted me around to help push your ministry, and you talked bad about me. Was I really a daughter? Or like my husband said, was I an unpaid slave? Let's close this out in the next part. See you there. Okay, this is part 16 and my final part. Let's keep in mind, I did not say every little thing that had happened. And if you thought this blew your mind, there's a lot more. I even went so far as to purchase a car and got robbed by another daughter of theirs for the sake of them. Yes, it goes deeper. I'm going to put this actually in a book, but I did not share my story to just share my story or to bring anyone down or to even get sympathy. I shared my now 16-part story so that we watch our connections. We know who we're connected to. We don't, in our vulnerable moments, mind you, I said I was in a bad abusive marriage and I needed help. And so in our bad, vulnerable moments, we don't want to connect to someone that we think is going to be there for us or think that as our destiny pusher or think is going to catapult us to our next level or you think is going to be a great partnership and then it's not. So we always have to have discernment. We always have to look at the motives. If the scale isn't balancing, yes, I can definitely say I stayed way too long. I stayed a lot longer than I should have. I tolerated a lot more than I should have. I was yelled at, ostracized, put down a lot more than I could even have imagined. And all for the sake of being accepted, all for the sake of being a daughter, all for the sake of serving, all for the sake of the fact that I had a good heart. And a lot of times those broken pieces, when we get broken by people that are especially in ministry, we take that into other places. My husband and I had early on in our relationship, we had issues where I said, I will never serve again. I will never do for anybody what I did for this family because I'm so hurt. When in all actuality, my husband was only telling me, baby, those are good attributes. When you use them for yourself or use them for someone that really means you well, it will go so far. But I was so afraid to use my gifts of administration, use my gifts of giving, use my gifts of serving in any more capacity because I was so broken by these people who said they were leaders, who said they were bishop and first lady, who said they were, world changers. Let's think about that. Listen, I want you to make sure you check your connections. I want to make sure that you whatever you do, make sure you know what the motive is behind what you're doing. Make sure you check your surroundings. Make sure that the balance weighs. Make sure that this is what God wants for you. And if you don't know, pray about it. If it doesn't feel right, if that still small voice, if your gut says no, 9 times out of 10, it's a no. Shalom.